Okay. Our next presenter is Xavier Frye. He's known as the Lion Lightworker. He's a lightworker with more than 18 years of experience. He offers spot-on and accurate readings, Reiki healing, master card readings with human design consultations. He facilitates change and transformation and helps people become the best version of themselves. He also clears auras of negative energy and blocks. You can find him on Facebook under Lion Lightworker, and he joins us today to share Release the Dark Side, Exploring Your Shadow, and Closing Out 2020. And he's also an amazing singer and composer and musician. Please welcome Xavier Frye. Welcome, Xavier.
Xavier is in room number 9.
He's supposed to be here.
Let me bring him.
Oh,
he's still in the room.
He's still hanging out. We gotta give him a little bit heads up next time, guys. Whoever, we need to let them know.
Okay, well, we're waiting for Xavier real fast.
Starling just requested can control my camera. Please do not touch anything. Whoever you are, Starling, I'm going to decline you. Do not touch anything. Thank you very much.
Very quickly, who wants a copy of my book? Put a number in the chat room. Very quickly, 2 minutes, very quickly. And this is a copy of my book, Pet Prayers and Blessings, that I co-authored with my wife. We did it back in 2008. This is the brand new 2020 edition of Pet Prayers and Blessings, bringing spirituality to your two-leggeds, four-leggeds, winged crawlers, whatever they might be. We love them all.
I'll do a prize too. I forgot. I'll give something away.
Where do we order that book from?
You can get it on Amazon.com. Pet Prayers and Blessings.
Beautiful. Good to know.
And volunteers, unfortunately, volunteers are not eligible. But Joe, you get a copy from me anyway.
Oh, he's going to comp you. All right. Let's see what the winner is. Beautiful.
All right, you got another 10 seconds.
Okay.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Xavier will be right with you. 4, 3, 2, 1. And the number that I chose was you can't see it, but it's number 9. And I think there was an exact 9 there, right? Somebody had a 9 there? Brenda, you have a 9. If you want to just give me your email address in the chat room, just private chat me, and I will cut a hold of you and we will arrange to get you the book. Thank you very much. So now, let me do this one more time. Xavier Frye is known as the Lion Lightworker. He's a light worker with more than 18 years experience. He offers spot-on and accurate readings, Reiki healing, master card readings, and human design consultation. He doesn't read your master card, by the way. He gives you a master card reading. He facilitates change and transformation and helps people become the best version of themselves. He also clears auras of negative energy and blocks. You can find him on Facebook under Lion Lightworker. And he joins us today to share Release the Dark Side, Exploring Your Shadow, and Closing Out 2020. Welcome, Xavier.
Thank you for that incredible introduction, Victor. I really appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name is Xavier, aka Lion Lightworker. I'm on all the social medias as Lion Lightworker. So if you're looking around for some spiritual sass and uplifting feedback and confirmations from the universe, I got plenty of it on deck. So please follow me over there. And let's go ahead and dive into my talk today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, shadow work. Okay, dokie. Let's open this up real fast. Pardonnez-moi. Okay. And then where is that button? Wait, did I screen share yet? I don't think I did. Hold on. Let's try that again. Excuse me, folks. There we go. Boom. All right. So, where'd it go? I'm still figuring out how to use the computer myself. I call myself a millennial, but, you know, sometimes we still have some technical difficulties. All right. So, shadow work. Release the dark side, exploring your shadow, and closing out 2020. So let's talk about it. What exactly is is shadow work, folks. So hold on, I've gone the wrong way. There we go. So according to science, humans only actively use about 10% of their brain capacity actively, right? So the conscious mind, the stuff that we think with, the stuff that we make our decisions with, the stuff that's right there in our face all day, every day, is actually only about 10% of what is only about 10% of what the brain is actually capable of working with and thinking about, right? So the other 90% is the unconscious part of the brain or the subconscious part of the brain. Now, the thing about this is you see there's a 9-to-1 ratio here, right? So the conscious mind, while it may be the thing that we kind of lead things with, the unconscious mind is the one that sort of fuels everything, right? Anybody that's ever studied the law of attraction or has followed up anything about manifesting and focusing and working with the mind and all that has heard this before. What you focus on in life shows up in your life. It shows up, it manifests in the real world. Okay. So the reason why the stuff that's so why the stuff that shows up in the past is in there is because the stuff in the unconscious is totally outweighs the personal stuff, right? It's way heavier. It's 90% of everything that we go through. And unfortunately, that's what holds all of our traumas and things. That's where we build everything from, right? So where do these things come from? Well, when we're little, we get some very lasting impacts from things that we experienced earlier in life. It could have been maybe your mother was distant, and so you didn't learn to, you learn to love in a way that is very aloof, right? Or perhaps maybe, you have an abusive father or something like that, and then you have issues with men in your life, right? Maybe you had an ex-girlfriend that broke up with you shortly after you got together and got with one of your friends, whatever it is, we all have these different things, and some of us have more heavier things to deal with than others, but they're all there, and they all start off from when we're younger. Okay. So initially from the first wave, we might get stuff from our parents, and then as we get a little older, you might experience some broken hearts or some bullies or whatever, any kind of thing may happen. Right. And so we internalize these things that happen, these events that happen in the early life, and we compartmentalize all this stuff, and we base all of our truths and about ourselves and about life and about love and about the world and about society at large based off of the things that we have rooted down in our unconscious part of our brain. Okay. So as we get older, we start to compartmentalize all these things. We start to roll with the punches. We normalize these traumas and these abuses and these things like that. And we just accept them as they are. And we accept that as a part of what life is, right? And so this mindset, this way of going about the world, this belief about the world kind of is the way we paint and create what shows up in the outer world. Okay. So we go about our lives to the best of our abilities, and we just keep it going because we live in a world where everything's always going, always moving. It never stops. So we just absolutely must, right? And of course, there's a lot of people that, everybody has got some of these things, right? Maybe that's not such a big deal, but honestly, if you really think about it, that's actually the whole problem, is that a lot of us have these things to deal with. Most of us have these things to deal with. It's not the fact that, it's not the fact that it's a state of normalcy amongst the collective is something that needs to be addressed in the first place, right? So the thing about this is if you, when you're manifesting stuff, right, you have the conscious part of your mind, which is kind of like the personality. Then you got the unconscious part of your mind, which is that 90% place. And then there's you amongst all of this, right? You're neither any of those things. Your body, your mind, and your soul, they're all three different intelligences, right? They all have different ways of going about stuff, right? The unconscious rules your body. The personality, the mind is the stuff that rules the personality and what you make your decisions and things with. And if these things aren't all in agreement with each other, right? They're all vibrating, right? So your body, mind, and soul are three different intelligences, and they all have their own vibration. Okay. So if you are spouting off these affirmations like, I am loved and abundant and successful and everything I touch turns to gold, but deep down in your subconscious, you don't believe those things, it's not happening. You can spout off all of those affirmations till you're blue in the face, and they're not going to work if your mind or your unconscious mind doesn't believe these things. If you have direct beliefs that contradict the stuff that you're creating or you're trying to create, you're only going to be trying to create them, or you're going to create things that reinforce the negative beliefs that you already have about yourself and prove you more right about these negative things that you have. Okay. So body, mind, and soul must be in agreement with one another in order for what you want to come into your life correctly or properly, right? So if they don't all agree with each other, it's much like a stringed instrument that's not been put in tune before somebody plays with it. Nobody's coming when an instrument is properly tuned, a musician can draw a crowd. But if a musician doesn't have its instrument tuned, nobody's coming to listen to that. And if they are listening to it, they aren't going to listen to it for very long. So this dissonance that goes on between the body, the unconscious, and the personality is what needs to be addressed. Okay. Now, one of my favorite things to get in about and talk about in my studies is some of these hermetic axioms from the Golden Dawn. This is one of these occult societies back in the day that did a lot of quantifying universal concepts and principles to help people create the life that they wanted. The word occult means hidden truths, right? So this is stuff that the general population might not have normal access to without actually seeking it out in the first place. Okay. And so these guys come up with a bunch of these rules. And one of them in particular that I'm super, super fond of, that stuck with me my whole life, is to cause a change from without. One must cause a change from within, right? So what does that mean? If you want to change what's going on in your outer world, you have to work on that stuff that's hidden in the shadows, right? So as above, so below, that's another one. So within, so without. Right? So to cause a change in your outer world, you have to make change in here. Solid, lasting, real change. You change your belief system, your perception, you change the world around you. And that is, when you hear people talking about doing the work, that's what they're talking about. So this whole thing is about honesty and acknowledging what's hidden in the unconscious part of the brain, right? As they say, the truth shall set you free, right? But at first it's going to piss you off. This Gloria Steinem woman, I'm feeling that. And it's very true. You have to accept the truth and what all that means, right? And what's really, really kind of interesting about truth is that truth is something that doesn't actually, there is a such thing as a truth, but it's very personalized. It's an individual kind of thing, right? It's your own personal truth as well. Now, the thing is we learn these personal truths from these traumas and things that we pick up on coming up into life, right? And so the problem with this is that these truths that we have accepted from these other traumatized people in our life, right? Because that's really what it is, right? Your parents or whoever did what they did because they themselves are doing the best with what they got as well, right? We're all kind of dealing with our own things and operating around them, right? So the grievances that you might have with your folks and that showed up earlier in life weren't even actually based on an actual truth, but a truth that those people that inflicted these traumas upon you may have perceived as a truth that isn't actually a whole truth, just a personal truth themselves. Okay. Now, like I said to you earlier, 10% of the brain is only going to do so much, right? So you've got to get the other 90% on board. This takes a lot of work, right? Now, it's consistency, it's work, it's it's all part of the process and becoming and doing better, right? The shadow work. So let's talk about a couple. Let's quantify the shadow a little bit. Let's talk about some psychologists and psychologists that studied these things and kind of quantified it. The first one that I want to talk about is a guy named Carl Jung. He has a quote that says, "Until you take responsibility for the direction that you take in life, you will assume it is you will be at its mercy, and you will call it fate." Right? This guy, Carl Jung, he's a really wise guy. He really did a lot for the psychology field, and he was one of the first people that coined the phrase projection. Okay. A projection, you guys have probably already heard this word before, especially in the spiritual community. It's a self-defense mechanism that the subconscious initiates to put pain and discomfort outside of the person when it is triggered within them, right? So something happens, the unconscious mind goes, "Oh my God," right? And then they put it on the person outside of them instead of owning that trigger themselves. And so they put it on somebody outside. And oftentimes that projection has very little to do with the person themselves. And it's not really a self-defense mechanism. It doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually keep the person safe. It just makes them, it's not a good look to project on a bunch of people. It just creates a lot of problems. The next person I want to talk about is Sigmund Freud. Everybody's heard of the Freudian slip, right? This guy is known as the father of psychoanalysis, and he was the first person to take a note of the way that parenting can have an effect on people in their adult life, right? So he was the one that basically coined the whole thing about that I was talking about earlier, noticing about if your mom was absent, you're probably gonna have an attraction for people that are aloof, or maybe you yourself have a hard time being affectionate with somebody else because your own mother was that way, right? So we inherit these idiosyncrasies and these qualms and things from the ways that our parents raised us in some way, shape, or form. And Sigmund Freud is one of the first people that took note of that and actually put it out into the world in the first place. Now, he's got a bit of he kind of took things a little bit on the deep end. He was very much all about like the unconscious desires and sex and stuff like that. And I think personally, he did a lot of projecting in his own right on a lot of other people. And in an extreme case, I think he also kind of had a little abuse in his life and projected that out in his studies. And so he's kind of been posthumously discredited for some of his observations because of the extremity in which he took that observation. But his initial observations is some of the building blocks of what psychology was built upon. Okay. So the next person we're going to talk about is Pavlov. Pavlov, everybody's heard of Pavlov's dogs, right? He did an experiment where he studied the behaviors of his animals, his dogs, and he noticed that when he went to go feed them, that they would slobber. Drool would just start coming out of their mouth, and he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. I wonder if I could get those dogs to react that way to something else." Right? So he eventually started to bring out a bell every time that he brought his food. to the dogs. And he would ring the bell, and over time, the dogs would learn to associate the bell with feeding time. And so eventually, Pavlov would go outside, ring the bell without the food, and the dogs would still do this, right? So this is behavioral psychology that he started to get in on, okay? The next person I want to talk about is John P. Watson. This guy is famous for a very inhumane experiment involving an infant named Albert and rats. Watson used to brag that he could basically teach anybody anything. He could make anybody any kind of thing if he raised them, right? And so to prove this point, he, I'm not even sure where this little boy came from. I suspect it was an orphan. But he got this little baby and he ran experiments on the child where he would come in the room and make a lot of noise and scare the baby and freak the baby out, and the baby would start crying, right? And he would just do this all the time. And so once the baby associated those noises and things to get scared and create that reaction, he would start to bring a white rat into the room with him as well while he was making this disruptive noises. And so after a while, the baby learned to associate the rat with all of that fear and stuff. And so Watson could go into the room with just the rat without making any noise, and the little baby would freak out and cry just as he expected it would. So the moral of this story is if you can teach a baby to fear a rat just by being mean to it, just think what your parents can do to their their children, right? So this is what we all learned, and how you can see now that I've hammered all this in and what shadow work is and how this stuff gets into your psyche, you can see why this is a very important thing to actually invest your energy into and to take seriously, right? If you really want to change your life, this is what you got to get it. You got to get that going. Okay. So let's talk about 2020. One of the other things that I also need to point out is like the concept of mirroring and the collective and the individual, right? The collective and the individual both go through the same things, right? So collectively, we have our own stuff happening, and individually, we all have similar things happening, right? So 2020 was a big, rough year for the collective. We had some really crazy transits. I'm not sure if you folks are familiar with astrology and stuff, but I got a little meme here that I posted sometime in June on my Instagram about some of the things that we had going on. And during June, we had Saturn in Aquarius, which was when the Rodney King riots were happening the last time around. Pluto was in a Capricorn, and that was during the American Revolution the last time. And then Pisces was in Neptune when Rome fell. And so at that point in time in June, we had all three of those things going on at the same time, right? And so, you guys have watched, everybody's lived through 2020. We had a whole lot of stuff going on. We had fire, war, civil unrest, a global pandemic. We literally had to just reevaluate a lot of what didn't work. We got a lot of the stuff that didn't work got exposed, and they can't be unseen. One thing else that I want to talk about, so we've got a lot of shadow work that a lot of things that have been presented as far as our shadow work is concerned to be looked at as a collective and as an individual. Okay. One thing I want to talk about in particular, that I think collectively we all could do as a whole to work on as our shadow work is concerned is racism. Some of you guys might be disagreeing with me on that, but stick with me for a minute and I'll drive you through it. So first things first is like racism is not just a one race's problem in the equation, right? And I'm just going to use the North America's example for this situation. I can't really speak a lot about other countries, but I can talk about what's going on here, right? And in my personal observation, I feel like collectively, this is something that we are purging as a whole, is this racism stuff, right? It's affecting not only the BIPOCs, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color, but it's also affecting white folks as well. So on one hand, you have Black people who have been dealing with the effects of this throughout our entire history since we've been in America, right? I don't really have to dig too far into that. And then on the other hand, we have white folks who are either just now really, really acknowledging all of this, or in some sort of state of disbelief that this is actually happening or that it is actually there, right? So on one hand, you have folks that have this great source of guilt that has come up because they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, and we got to do something about this, and we got to fix this, and this isn't right, you know? And so there's some guilt for that. And then on the other hand, there is just a lot of you know, there's just some acknowledgement that needs to be done on all these things, you know. So there's guilt on one hand, and a disbelief that it even exists on one place, and then on the other hand, that's the indigenous people and the Black people have been dealing with it for forever, and you know, so it's just a kind of a thing that has kind of got to work itself out. So on one hand, people are just kind of stressing, and the other kind, people are just kind of having to deal with it, right? So for those of you that disagree with all this, that this is even a real thing or that racism actually exists, I would invite you to acknowledge this, because this is the exact same thing that I'm talking about in the shadow work that needs to be dealt with, right? The things that we ignore are the things that are getting in the way of our progress. And racism is one of those things that is collectively stunting our growth as a species, okay? So we got to acknowledge this inner wounding and this inner work that needs to be dealt with, because deep down, we're all just a bunch of hurt children dealing with each other. You know, we all need a little space. We all need a little love. We all need a little acceptance about all those things. And that's not going to happen by ignoring another person's perspective. So for those of you that do disagree with this, have that for a little food for thought. Another thing I want to talk about is toxic binaries. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. The mind is very quick to interpret something as good or bad, right? And unfortunately, that binary itself kind of gets applied to a lot of things that it shouldn't be applied to. One in particular that I want to talk about is the emotions that the binary shouldn't be put upon. Like, people in the spiritual community in particular want to like be all love and light and embrace the positive emotion, the positive emotions, and kill the negative ones, or to kill the ego and all that stuff like that. And quite frankly, that's not a very productive mindset to go about in all these things. And the binary in its own right puts us in some weird holding patterns on things that actually should be embraced and acknowledged and accepted about ourselves, right? So the notion of light being positive and dark being good, or light being positive and dark being evil, or light being good and dark being evil, is totally just, it's not, that's not really truthful, right? Because first of all, when you think about darkness, right? Let's talk about darkness for a second, right? When you close your eyes, what's behind them? Darkness. When you plant a seed into the ground, what do you put that seed in? Darkness. When you have a child in the womb, you know, when a woman is carrying a baby, what is that baby in? Darkness. So darkness isn't evil. Darkness is just a part of the whole creative process as our species is concerned. That's not evil. And quite frankly, evil can look you. So I would invite y'all to knock that out of the park and to not ignore the less positive, less fun, less high vibing feelings that may show up, right? The other emotions are also part of you. And most of these things that we put on binaries are actually something that goes on more of a polarity kind of thing, or a spectrum, rather than a this or a that, right? It's kind of like hot and cold. Where does hot start and cold begin on a thermometer? Maybe oh, 32 degrees. No, I'm just kidding about that. But like, you know, where does it start, right? Where does it begin? They're part of the same polarity, same pole, period. Same thing with anger and peace, or war and love, right? Like all those things are on polarities. So they're not necessarily good, bad, or ever, whatever. They're just part of your body's way of communicating with you to let you know if something is correct for you or not. So do not ignore the other feelings that aren't just happy. It's not always about love and light and sunshine and daisies. It doesn't work like that. You know, we all have things that we got to deal with. And we all have very intense feelings and emotions that we gotta acknowledge and have, because that's part of the meat suit. That's part of how we communicate with ourselves. It's part of how we figure out whether we should or should not do something. So to ignore those, the negative side of your emotional spectrum, it's kind of leaving you a little blindsided and ill-prepared for life. It's not all fun and games. I said this earlier. Shadow work is messy. It's scary. The ego wants to protect you, right? And avoid pain at all costs. That's its job. The ego is not a bad thing. It's just how one expresses itself on the physical plane. And so you got to visit these skeletons in the closets. You got to let them out. They're rattling around and knocking on the doors and jiggling the handle, trying to get out. And, you know, if you just let them stay there and just fester in the dark, by the time you get around to actually examining it, it can be something that becomes overwhelming and unmanageable, right? So you got to get in there and you got to do that work, and you got to focus, and you got to really be gentle with yourself and feel these things and acknowledge these things. You know, a lot of this is difficult to do by oneself. And I think that's really what light workers are here to do, is to hold the hand of somebody while going into their darkness, in their private little hell, and help them sort all that out, bring a little love and truth and light to them, and some tools to work with and work on what is hiding in those shadows, right? So in my practice and with my clients, I found a few things that I like to work with. I use the tarot to help put things on the table, right? Just look at everything objectively, without any nonsense and extra stuff, so you can just see the things. The tarot works with your unconscious and the archetypes anyway. I also look at human design and Reiki healings as well. The human design helps figure out where you've been conditioned in life. Let me show you guys a little bit of that real fast. Before I get into that, where is the screen share button? I'm already screen sharing, excuse me. So yeah, so the body graph, this is a human design body graph here. And basically what you're looking at is an energetic blueprint of somebody's body, somebody's being, right?
We don't
all
see
these
it.
shapes is like a chakra.
We don't see it.
All of these,
We don't,
all the white stuff
we
is
don't
where you're
see it.
drawing stuff in. All the colored stuff is where you're taking stuff out, and the white places are where you're taking in your intensities and learning all your
Xavier, we
bad
don't see it.
behaviors and things about yourself. And this shows you where you learned the things about yourself that aren't correct.
Sweetie,
and
we
so
don't see that. We don't see
basically,
it.
the process for doing the shadow work.
Xavier,
Oh no! Oh my
See
goodness.
it.
Okay. What?
Still see your
Yes.
PowerPoint, Xavier.
You don't see it? Okay, hold on. You still see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
yeah,
Can you see it now?
Nope.
No.
Still see your PowerPoint.
so
All
no,
right. How about this? Is this helping? Is that better? Is it gone?
Nope.
no.
Screen sharing has stopped as the shared window is closed. Gross. Okay, let me try that again. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, so now you just open to the new one.
There we go. So this is the body graph, right? So all these, depending on the day you were born, these shapes.
Xavier, we don't have. Oh, there it is.
There-
we got
there
it
it is.
now. We
Why
got
is
it
that
now.
not working?
We got it. We got it now.
Oh, I think maybe
Right.
my audio visual might be interfering with the.
We've got it now.
With the
got it.
feedback or how quickly you guys are getting it. Okay, cool. So what you're looking at on this is called a body graph, and this is what human design gives you as far as your chart is concerned to tell you about yourself, right? And so what this is each of these shapes is sort of an energy center on your body, right? All the white ones are where you're taking information in from the world. All the colored ones are where you're putting information out into the world that other people are receiving. The colored in stuff shows you where you are you all the time, all day, every day, what you're putting out into the world consistently. The white stuff is the inconsistent things in your life, where your dramas and your inconsistencies and your foibles and the things you don't like, and you hit yourself in the forehead like, oh, why did I do that? That comes from the white stuff in your centers and your mind processing very exaggerated information, right? And so I like to look at this stuff because it shows you, it gives you some blinders for all the things you may pick up on in life, right? So if you learn where you're consistent, then you know what you can rely on. Then you can kind of cut out the other stuff as far as your decision-making process is concerned, because that's inconsistent, this white stuff. And that's always going to change, you know, and that's going to bring you troubles, right? And so if you know this about yourself, right, then you can go about your life in a way that's correct for you without getting swept up in things that don't have anything to do with you, directly as yourself, and not in the way that the whole world has been taught to operate in. One of the other things about this is everybody's got different types of auras. So if you work, so basically this is a screenshot of how somebody showed up the way they got here. It's like the owner's manual for your car. You know, when you get your car and you're like, oh, what's this check engine light thing going on? What's this? I've never seen that before. And then you open up the thing for the first time and you're like, oh, my car's got heated seats. Interesting. I didn't know those were there. I've got a GPS system. What? Right? So this stuff shows you in a way that you may not have even actually learned, right? And going back to what I was saying earlier, what we've already learned about ourselves for the most part probably isn't true. Especially if it's the traumatizing things, right? Because all that stuff is built off of stuff that other people put onto you, you know? So the whole point of, my whole process in shadow work is to relearn yourself, to know yourself in a way that you didn't learn yourself the first go around, right? Iron out the kinks, smooth out the stuff, learn some new truths about yourselves that contradict the old ones, and then gather evidence that shows you that these things aren't real, right? So you can actually accept the newness that is actually you, and rather than the stuff that you've got all this momentum and stuff built around.
And also,
right?
that's
Xavier, it for my shadow work talk, guys. It's a lot of work.
Xavier, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? I can hear you now.
And also change your oil and filter every 3,000 miles. I said change your oil and filter every 3,000 miles.
Yeah, you got to change your filter. You got to change your filter every 3,000 miles. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey,
absolutely.
Just getting a chakra tune up.
And so for those of you, hold on.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up, Xavier.
I can't hear you, Sheri.
Xavier, we need to wrap up. Wrap up. Can you hear us?
He's freezing.
He's freezing. Can you hear us?
Got a bad connection.
Oh. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Ah, poop.
Sweetie,
let me turn off my here. If I turn off my video, maybe that'll help. So those of you, sorry, I wish that had.
Xavier, we need to move them into your private room to continue the conversation. So we got Donna Reyna coming up next.
Xavier, are you there?
So he's going to be in room number 9.
Sorry, guys, I'm back. My computer kicked me out.
So you're going to be in room number 9, where you can continue the conversation. Folks can join you in room number 9. And do you have a door prize for us tonight, Xavier? Hello? Okay, I think we've lost him. Xavier, there? Xavier, are you there?
He's here.
Yeah, but I don't think he can hear us.
I can kind of hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Do you have a door prize for us tonight?
Yes, today I'll be giving away an hour session with me today. And so go ahead and I'm picking a number between 1 and 100 folks. I'm gonna
Yep,
pick it right
attendees,
now.
put your numbers in the chat room. We got a couple of minutes. We got to do this, wrap it up real fast.
It's okay. We're good. We're good.
And staffers are not entitled. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Also, if you folks would like to work with me later, you can contact me on my website, www.lionlightworker.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter under @LionLightworker, and that'll get you straight there.
And also, if you Google his name, you're going to see some amazing music that he's part of. He's an amazing musician and singer and composer. And quite frankly, I don't know why you're not a superstar, my friend.
I'm working on that too. That's the plan for 2021.
Wonderful. Okay, a couple of.
You can grab your guitar and close it out tonight if you feel inspired. I do have a few minutes. I have nobody doing the closing yet.
I'm into it.
Okie dokie. So we got 10. Put your numbers in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3,
On a session.
2, 1. Xavier, what is the number? 99.
99.
Who's closest to 99? Who's closest to 90? It looks like Brenda.
But Brenda won already.
Oh yeah, Brenda won a book. I'm sorry. That's right.
Well, aww.
You know what? Let's give it to Brenda. She's been a trooper all day. Give it to Brenda. It's okay. It's okay.
All right, Brenda. Please come find me later so I can get your information from you, and we'll get that started. All right.
And he's going to be in room number 9.